Thank you for joining us. A recent event at the Breakers Hotel, hosted by the Palm Beach Business Group, featured prominent medical doctors and a keynote speech by Bill Falloon, the co-founder of Life Extension, an organization in the forefront of research designed to induce systemic rejuvenation. We'll learn more about the latest breakthroughs following these messages.
Studies are now ready to begin to confirm meaningful reversal of pathological aging processes. These clinical trials aim to alter older humans so that they function as much younger individuals. Even modest success will result in a paradigm shift that will impart enormous societal benefits, such as sparing Medicare from insolvency. Life Extension is not standing idle while 5,000 Americans die each day from age-related illnesses. Joining us are physician scientists who want to hurry up these technologies to keep people from aging to death. While Life Extension is pushing these projects forward, we need financial help to ensure these studies are carried through to fruition.
And now I have the great pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker. Bill Falloon compiled the 1,500-page medical reference book, Disease Prevention and Treatment. His latest book is Pharmacracy, How Corrupt Deals and Misguided Medical Regulations Are Bankrupting in America, and What to Do About It. He's also director and co-founder of the Life Extension Foundation. He is spearheading human age research via the Society for the Rescue of Our Elders, a new public benefit organization. The Life Extension Foundation, which has been mentioned earlier, is a nonprofit organization whose long-range goal is the radical extension of the healthy human being and human lifespan. The organization now has over 100,000 members, and each month mails 300,000 copies of the Extension magazine to newsstands, subscribers, and members. To promote Life Extension innovative medical concepts, Bill has been featured in hundreds of media appearances, including the Phil Donahue Show, the Joan Rivers Show, Tony Brown's Journal, ABC News Day One, maybe you're involved there, and Newsweek magazine. So now I'd like to bring Bill up to the podium for our keynote speech.
Thank you for those kind words. I founded an organization in 1977 that has since grown to be the world's largest consumer-based anti-aging medical group. And in the early 1980s, we identified some methods to slow aging and reduce the risk of degenerative diseases associated with growing older. And since then, these concepts have been recognized, for the most part, by the conventional medical establishment. And what our controversial position today is based on a lot of research, by the way, is that aging is a reversible condition. In other words, technologies have emerged and they've been validated in the animal model where old animals have been able to grow biologically younger. And what our mission today is to advance research in elderly people to see if we can validate the age reversal effects in people that the animals are enjoying. So the title of today's talk is How Does Stroke Relate to Age Reversal? Well, stroke is a leading cause of disability in the United States and throughout the world for the most part, as is aging. And we're going to talk about specifically ischemic stroke, which occurs when a clot occludes blood flow to a portion of the brain. And this is an absolute epidemic. 2,000 people a day suffering an ischemic stroke. They may lose their eyesight, they may become paralyzed, cognitively impaired, and many die from the effects of acute ischemic stroke. And when you rush to an ER room, there are basically three outcomes that are going to occur. Some are fortunate enough to leave the hospital a couple days later, in some cases, in pretty good shape. Others are permanently paralyzed. They're taken to a nursing home facility where they remain for the rest of their lives. And others die. They wind up in cemeteries. Now, we believe at Life Extension that many doctors are giving up too soon and not utilizing FDA-approved therapies to reverse acute ischemic stroke. And I'm going to show you a lot of evidence to that effect in this presentation today, and the purpose is not to be critical, but to educate this group. In the event you suffer acute stroke symptoms, I'm going to let you know where to go and what to ask for when you're taken to an ER room. Because unfortunately, there's a lot of technology out there. You can't expect every single medical doctor to know about every single therapy, nor can you expect every single ER room to have access to the most advanced technologies that can reverse an acute stroke. So to give you an example, and I like to always use historic analogies when I'm making a point, in 1996, the FDA approved a drug called tissue plasminogen activator. TPA is the acronym for that. They approved that to treat acute ischemic stroke. And what that drug does is dissolve a blood clot that is occluding flow of blood to a portion of the brain. Unfortunately, 11 years later, there weren't enough hospitals using the FDA-approved drug. People were coming in by ambulance or by car, and they were becoming paralyzed right before a medical doctor's eyes, the nurse's eyes, and they weren't aggressively using the TPA drug. And so many of them wound up confined to nursing homes or cemeteries. This outraged me that medical doctors and ER staff were not recognizing the value of technologies that already existed to reverse acute stroke. This particular article in Life Extension magazine talked about a mechanical clot retrieval technology called endovascular thrombectomy. And what they do there is when the TPA is unable to dissolve the clot that's occluding blood flow to the brain, they'll insert a catheter into the femoral artery, thread it up into a cerebral artery where the blood clot exists. And they're able to literally pull the blood clot out of that cerebral artery that's occluding blood flow. And a person who's perhaps paralyzed already or becoming paralyzed, it goes in reverse. Because once you restore blood flow, if you do it in time, the stroke reverses itself. The problem is this technology is not yet available everywhere. And we got some support for this by the New England Journal of Medicine. They recognized the fact that the studies that had been done in clinical settings were showing that stroke was a reversible phenomenon. And you'll note there that in January 2015, New England Journal said, well, up to 6 hours after the onset of stroke symptoms, endovascular thrombectomy is effective. That's 2015. Well, we knew a little bit better back then in 2015 that it was effective longer than 6 hours. How did we know? We made a lot of phone calls to emergency room departments. It wasn't always easy to get through to the doctors, but we talked to some vascular interventionalists who were using thrombectomy, and they were telling us we're getting results up to 12 hours after the onset of stroke. So even though the FDA labeled indication may have been only 6 hours, in the clinical setting, when an aggressive vascular interventionalist wasn't willing to give up, he was seeing results up to 12 hours. Well, 2.5 years later, major breakthrough. It made a little bit of news media coverage, but not nearly enough. Turns out that thrombectomy procedure, the mechanical removal of a clot occluding blood flow to a portion of the brain, effective up to 24 hours after the onset of a stroke. This piece of information is so valuable. If that's all you learned today, this whole morning of discussion, it's worth it. Because if you suffer stroke symptoms, I'm going to tell you which hospitals, by the way, in Palm Beach County to go to who have this technology. And it's not the fault of hospitals that don't have it. There's just not enough trained vascular interventionalists who are able to utilize the thrombectomy. The American Heart Association, just about a month ago, endorsed what we at Life Extension and the New England Journal of Medicine were espousing 3 years ago. So this is great news. They're suggesting that in certain cases, thrombectomy is effective 24 hours after stroke onset. And the TPA drug-dissolving therapy, bear in mind that was approved back in 1997. Here we are 21 years later, and the American Heart Association is telling doctors and the public, use it more aggressively. You're going to start to get more results. And here's the tragedy. Starting in 2015, they could have saved a lot of people from permanent confinement to nursing homes, but they weren't doing it. And we looked at all the data to come up with a rough estimate as to how many people right now are lying in nursing homes, half their body paralyzed, they're cognitively impaired, their lives are absolutely miserable. And we estimate right now there are about 180,000 Americans who needlessly had to be confined to a nursing home because more aggressive use of TPA and thrombectomy were not incorporated. This is incredibly valuable knowledge to acquire. If you suffer stroke symptom onset, number one, go to the hospital by ambulance. You get quicker care. You also have the paramedics able to call the ER department and say, this patient looks like they're having a stroke. They can have the thrombectomy ready to go when you arrive. Very, very important. And just a couple weeks ago, front page of the Wall Street Journal announces a medical breakthrough. Thrombectomy. It's going to save a lot of lives. And that's great. We appreciate the Wall Street Journal putting it on the front page a couple weeks ago. But if you were paying attention to the medical literature, and this is what we do with our Life Extension magazine, we pay attention and we publish, you would have known this 3 years ago. It would save a lot of lives, save a lot of paralysis. This was the article, front page of the Wall Street Journal. Just a couple weeks ago, as I was preparing this presentation, I pick up the journal and I see this on the front page. I said, wow, it's finally getting some attention, long overdue attention. Now here is a direct beneficiary of the technology that can reverse stroke. Pat Robertson had all the symptoms of an acute ischemic stroke. His family adroitly rushed him to an ER room, and they immediately recognized he's becoming paralyzed. He was becoming paralyzed right before their eyes. And yet within 10 minutes of aggressive TPA, clot-dissolving drug therapy, the paralysis went in reverse. And a couple days later, Pat Robertson left the hospital in good shape. And yet, a couple years before that, they may have just watched him become paralyzed and shipped him off to a nursing home a couple days later. So these are real-world examples of technologies that exist today, and yet they're underutilized. And that's really regrettable for a lot of reasons. Now, I don't expect you to really pay attention to every single date, but this shows you how long a technology takes to make it into the clinical setting. And frankly, it's outrageous. In 1987, Larry King had a coronary thrombotic heart attack. He was laying there with horrific angina pain, taken to an ER room, and he was lucky enough to go to a hospital that was engaged in the clinical study of TPA. And they reversed his heart attack. Within minutes of the TPA being administered, his pain went away and he was okay. And he went on a campaign after that to force the FDA to approve TPA. We joined him along with the Wall Street Journal and a number of other groups to push the FDA to get this drug approved. That's 1987. It took another 10 years or so to get them to approve the same drug to reverse cerebral blood clots. But as you can see with this timeline, in 2018, the American Heart Association is pushing for more aggressive use. That's a heck of a lot of years in which people needlessly died or were confined to nursing home facilities because technology did not move ahead fast enough. This is my father-in-law, 79 years of age, holding his 6-month-old grandson. 30 days later, due to gross medical incompetence, he suffered an ischemic stroke and he was permanently paralyzed. For 3 years, he laid in a nursing facility. That's his grandson, now about 3 years old. He had a second grandson. Unfortunately, didn't quite get to enjoy that grandfather experience because he was laying there permanently paralyzed until he died. This was completely needless. It was medical incompetence, and it reflects what was just said said by the introduction here, that you got to know, you got to educate yourself. You can't just let some nurse, some doctor tell you something and walk away and say, well, that's the way it is. You've got access now to a lot of data on the internet. PubMed.gov gives you access to every published paper in the world virtually. So you can look up certain information and not become a victim like this. You just don't have to be. And that's the issue that I'm going to describe today, is delay, the deadly impact of delays. Because this is just a brief chart of how long it took for stroke therapy reversal to become common medical practice. And our contention is more people are aging to death today needlessly than were dying of ischemic stroke. And the fact that you have to remember is, where is your nearest thrombectomy capable facility? Now, the previous term was comprehensive stroke center, and that meant a stroke center that was talented in using the TPA drug and or the thrombectomy. But there's some hospitals pretending to be comprehensive stroke centers, but they don't know how to do the thrombectomy yet. So the new term, and this is what the American Heart Association is recommending, is look for the nearest thrombectomy capable emergency room facility. And these are the thrombectomy capable facilities that we've been able to identify in Palm Beach County. Now, more and more of the hospitals will know how to do this. There's simply not enough trained vascular interventionalists to do it. So these are the places where you want to go now if you have stroke symptoms. And we'll have this all up on a website, so you'll be able to look this up anytime you want. But you can also actually pick up the phone and call your local hospitals and ask them, are you thrombectomy capable? These are just signs and symptoms of a stroke. You can just type those into Google, stroke symptoms, and you can find out what they are. People don't always know them, though, and if you are able to identify stroke symptoms, that gets you to the hospital faster, and time means a lot. Now, most strokes are preventable situations. These are the risk factors for stroke that can be identified with blood tests. And we advocate that everyone in this room have these kinds of blood tests done at least once a year to make sure that they're not at an increased risk of a stroke or a heart attack or cancer. All of these tests can give us information that can help us identify risk factors that you can control. And you can ask your doctor to do these tests. Life Extension does tests. We advocate passionately that once a year have these blood tests done, so that if you have even one stroke risk factor, you can do something to lower that risk. And we've been advocating that our entire 41-year history. Hypertension, major stroke risk factor. And I'm looking at the people in this room, including myself, and hey, hypertension is absolutely epidemic. Look at these numbers. And these numbers, by the way, were based on the old hypertension guidelines. If you're over 65 years of age, guess what? The odds are you have higher than optimal blood pressure. And if you do, well, you're at risk for kidney failure, heart attack, stroke, loss of eyesight. These are all the problems associated with hypertensive diseases, and yet it's a controllable situation. Here's where the problem occurred. There's two different definitions for hypertension. The dictionary says abnormally high blood pressure. The dictionary definition. Medical definition, very different. It is blood pressure that's high enough that it may eventually result in health problems. And the problem is, well, hypertension is normal. You're over 65 years of age, you probably have higher than optimal blood pressure, and unfortunately, that's going to condemn you to a higher risk of stroke, heart attack, kidney failure, etc. You want to do something about it. But the bottom line to understand is hypertension is not abnormal. And where the debate occurred, and Life Extension has debated conventional authorities now for the last 30 plus years, is that doctors started treating hypertension when the systolic number reached 140 to 150 millimeters of mercury. We at Life Extension, we were looking at the published literature back in the 1980s, and it showed that people who kept their blood pressure below 120 they were having fewer heart attacks and fewer strokes. So this debate went on. I'm going to play a brief little segment of something I talked about 9 years ago to a group to take a little bit of a water break.
Low blood pressure confers longevity. Low blood pressure protects us against stroke, heart attack, kidney failure. So again, we are battling nature tooth and nail, and we are refusing to accept what nature has in store for us.
The debate did not end in 2009. That was a biomedical conference at Nova Southeastern. I was a proponent for the low blood pressure, keeping it low. A lot of people felt, well, the data wasn't sufficient. Well, we had partial vindication in 2013. Huge meta-analysis of 18 prior studies. And they looked at people who kept their blood pressure below 120 and compared it to people whose blood pressure was 120 to 139. And you wouldn't think that would make much of a difference. And unfortunately, most doctors weren't treating blood pressure if it was just between 120 and 139. We'll look at the results. If you had blood pressure below 120, based on this meta-analysis, a 71% reduction in your risk of stroke. Actually, if it was between 120 and 139, you had a 71% increase in your risk of stroke and about a 50% increase in your risk of heart attack. And all you had to do was lower your blood pressure below 120, and you saved yourself from this. But the medical profession wanted more data. And we don't blame them, by the way. Observational studies are not always accurate. What they wanted to do, and this study was designed, funded by the federal government, which we appreciate, a tightly controlled study where they were going to do something where they would look at two groups. One where they would lower their blood pressure below 140, the other group below 120. And after 3 years, guess what? The people who regressively targeted their blood pressure below 120 had a huge reduction in the risk of cardiovascular death, a 27% lower overall risk of mortality. This study has changed the guidelines. The new guidelines are you want to keep it below 120, but look at how much data there was before. All this data in the early 1980s showing optimal blood pressure for most people, not everybody, but most people around 115/75. The data all the way back to the 1980s, and it's taken this long. And how did people get it wrong, doctors? Well, it wasn't abnormal for older people to have higher blood pressure. So they were letting people walk out of their office with systolic readings of 120 to 150 before aggressive treatment was implemented. This is unfortunate. Do you want to be normal? Answer is no. We're older people. We need to be abnormal because older people suffer a lot of degenerative conditions, an unfortunate problem. So at the end of 2017, American Heart Association comes out with a guideline that concurs with what we advocated back in the early 1980s. Optimal blood pressure for most people, not everybody, because some people unfortunately need higher blood pressure to perfuse their kidneys and their brain, and that is unfortunate, but optimal under 120. Low blood pressure confers longevity. This is a major, major fact. It's now time to use existing technology to deal with aging, and our problem is delays. Delays cause needless deaths. You look at how long it took to eradicate smallpox in Great Britain. It took over 100 years and over 100,000 people needlessly dying before they eradicated smallpox. It's very incredible. And even last century, you had 300 million people around the world die of smallpox. When every one of us was alive, there were people dying of smallpox. Hard to believe, but that's how long it takes for technology to advance. And smallpox has a lot to do with aging, because aging right now, we think, can be controlled by virtue of using young human plasma. We don't know exactly what's in the young human plasma that's going to reverse aging, but we do know that it is working in the animal model, and we suspect in humans. Smallpox was eradicated before they ever knew viruses existed. Think about that. They didn't understand that viruses existed, and yet they realized the cowpox vaccine could prevent smallpox. We know a lot more about aging today than what Edward Jenner did about smallpox. A lot more today. And when it comes to age reversal, Wall Street Journal's been giving us some interesting coverage about how to extend the lifespan of your pet. These dogs, by the way, are living longer using a drug that you can use if you choose to. CNN's been giving it some nice coverage, and I'm going to play a brief clip from CNN right now to show you what you might want to do if you want your dog to live a little bit longer. And within a couple months, we're going to publish findings about how you can use this drug to live longer.
Go, everybody, go!
You sit? Good boy.
He should be at the end of his life.
He doesn't look it.
Yes.
Before you start taking rapamycin, how long would he run around for?
After about 10 minutes of running and playing, he would get really tired, stop, and then his arthritis would kick in. And then he wouldn't walk for the next 2 or 3 days.
And now how long will he run around for?
An hour or two.
This drug is very likely to have the same effects on lifespan and health span in dogs and probably in people as we've seen in laboratory animals.
So is this the miracle drug for dogs?
I don't know if it's the miracle drug for dogs. It's the miracle drug for my dog. It's what is keeping him alive, I believe.
If your dog is suffering from heart failure, by the way, the rapamycin drug seems to be very effective. A clinical trial is going on right now in Southern California to see if rapamycin can reverse aging in people. Those results will be out within the next 2 to 3 months. If you register on our Rescue Elders website, you'll get an email, and it'll tell you rapamycin works or it doesn't. People will suggest a dose. But again, talking about delays, took 400 years to eradicate scurvy, which is absolutely absurd. And how people died in 1900, very different than how they died in 1996. Over a very brief time period, they eradicated bacterial infection. People started living a lot longer, and the way people died changed radically. But look how long it took, even after penicillin was identified. Look how long it took to bring it forward into clinical practice. And again, we're in that same predicament right now. Aging may be reversible, and yet people are just letting it happen. They're literally dying when they may not need to. You look at the delay even after Alexander Fleming published his work on penicillin killing bacteria. It took 18 years, tens of millions of people needlessly dying, including a heck of a lot of children, which should concern a lot of people. So what we know today, young plasma rejuvenates old animals. That is substantiated in a peer-reviewed published literature actually going back to the 1950s, and by 1972 there was enough data there to absolutely say that if you circulate young blood into old animals, the old animals will grow biologically younger. And Nature did a review of this in 2015, which sparked our interest in accelerating human research in this area, that the systemic age reversal effect of young plasma was so apparent that people started saying, we need to start testing this in people. Well, if old animals are being made biologically younger, we need to start doing this in people. Good news is the leading institutions around the world are doing research in this area. Our concern is they're not going to do it fast enough to save everybody. Johnson & Johnson put $50 million into a study to see if young plasma can be a treatment for early stage Alzheimer's disease. We appreciate all that, but again, they're going through the FDA approval process, and that's often way too slow. This study came out last year. Fascinating. They took young teenage plasma, young human plasma from teenagers, and they put it into old mice, and the old mice, they were rejuvenated. And specifically, it rejuvenated their brains. It induced neurogenesis, the formation of new brain cells in old mice in response to young plasma from human teenagers. Huge, huge advance. And these benefits were not just in the brains where they could see the brain cells growing, the animals were behaving younger. And when we do studies on human beings trying to reverse aging, we look first at clinical measures, which are blood pressure, lipids, glycemic indexes, but then we also look at the aging biomarkers, telomere length, as Tom was talking about, DNA methylation patterns, inflammatory factors, immune status. We all want that to improve, but wouldn't we like to behave younger, start behaving like a 25-year-old as opposed to the way we have to now? And it's being recognized. The media is picking up on the fact that young blood rejuvenates old animals. It's time to start doing this in people. And prestigious publications are all reviewing this, and they have pretty good scientific review boards, and they're saying, hey, why are we waiting to see if this works in people? We are losing 5,000 Americans every day, by the way, to a degenerative illness, and that is really unfortunate. And again, the cognitive benefits of young plasma, this was just a couple days ago this study came out. I had to add it to this PowerPoint presentation at the last minute that they were finding neurological improvements in a young plasma study. We continue to see the data. Human age reversal. It's going to become an obligation of medicine at some point if we accelerate it. If we don't accelerate it, I hate to say it, a lot of people in this room won't be around to benefit. Now, an intervention that you might want to consider available right now is some technology that's being pioneered by a number of researchers that made the front cover of Time magazine this week. This week, front cover of Time magazine are talking about boosting NAD+ levels in older people in order to induce an age reversal benefit. And they're talking about something that is on the horizon, but it really isn't. It's available right now. It's available right now, and it was actually available in 2014. We wrote first about this NAD precursor that can boost NAD levels in the November 2014 issue of Life Extension magazine. Our supporters got on this, and they've been on it now for the last 4 years. We wrote another article about the benefits of boosting NAD. And by the way, this is through a dietary supplement you can buy from a number of different companies. You can go right on the internet and buy this anywhere. But I'm letting you know this is a technology you can benefit from right now. And I want to candidly tell this group, I've been invited to speak here for a number of years, and I've had to decline because, frankly, I'm a night person. Can't get up that early. And this year, I underwent NAD infusion therapy, by the way, April 2017. My sleep patterns have improved 80%. My systolic blood pressure is about 20 points lower. I've had some remarkable benefits from NAD. And again, Time magazine this week's talking about it. You could have learned about it 4 years ago in our magazine. There are so many benefits to NAD+, I can't describe them all. But I'll mention one. Your DNA, it's breaking. It breaks when we get older, and our ability to repair it diminishes. NAD enables DNA repair to occur. And you can take a precursor, nicotinamide riboside. Again, you can buy this from companies throughout the internet. It's all good stuff. It will convert to NAD+ in your body. But if you're over 50 years of age, you need something more. You need to consider NAD+ infusions. I went through 8 consecutive days of infusions, which was more than I needed, but I always try to test upper limits, so when I talk to a group, they know I've done it. You can consider it yourself. New protocol, and there are doctors in this area, in the Palm Beach County area, who are now doing this Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You go to the doctor's office, they'll hook you up, and they'll have the NAD itself go into your bloodstream. And after about 3 or 5 hours, you're done. And while you're there, you can work on your laptop, you watch TV. They make it a very comfortable setting. Cost of this, $4,000 to $5,000 right now. It's not something that I sell. It's nothing I make money off of. That's just what it costs for the doctor and the nurse and the NAD and everything else that goes into conventional medicine. That's about what it costs. But I highly suggest suggest it be considered by people over 50 years of age who can afford it. If you're under 50, you might only need the NAD precursor. Great news. Again, this is recent stuff I'm talking about here. A number of the Silicon Valley tech giants put up $250 million, and a lot of that money is going to go to find a way to slow or reverse aging. So it's being recognized by the people in Silicon Valley who have achieved the impossible. They are viewing, I'm talking about these young tech multi-billionaires, they've used technology to accomplish the impossible, and they view human aging as just another technological challenge. And they are putting money up. The government's putting money up in order to spare Medicare from insolvency. The media is picking up on the fact that if you put enough resources into a problem, you might live for an indefinite period of time. This is what the media is reporting on, and we happen to know this is very accurate. George Church, Harvard University, he's my age. He believes within the next 5 to 10 years, CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing technology will enable us to reprogram our cells so we function in a youthful manner. He's talking about eradicating biological aging with his technology. He's raised over $100 million to do that, and we applaud that research. We just need to be around to take advantage of it. If we don't live long enough and they find a way to reverse aging, it doesn't do us much good. But people are putting money into it. The most famous wealthy people are recognizing aging as something that can be aggressively attacked, and they're putting their own money into it. They believe that aging will at some point become a relic of the past, just like polio, just like smallpox, just like most diseases that used to kill people. They're not around anymore. We're now confronting aging. And this came out recently. Mayo Clinic is working on a technology to produce billions of stem cells. We can't wait to see the results of their clinical research. We are engaged, by the way, with many, many of these researchers. We exchange information openly, and we can't wait to tell you what to do. But here is some of the risks that we face. 2002, embryonic stem cell research banned with any federal funded money, and that torpedoed a lot of good research. We at Life Extension fought against that. We didn't win that battle. We normally win when we go against the FDA and other government agencies, but we lost that battle. And if there is any government interference in our research, I ask all of you, please write your congressman, tell them please stop interfering with our life-saving initiatives. And the reason is we're all running out of time. These are Social Security mortality tables, and I'm 63 years of age, by the way, and I look at that 21 years and I think, that's not a lot of time. Some of you are a little bit older than me. As you can see, we don't have a lot of time. We need to accelerate human age reversal research. Any delay, well, 5,000 Americans every day dying from age-related illness. Is there any upper limit to how long we can live? Nature published a report, a group of experts says there's no upper limit threshold as to how long humans can live in a biological state. And you look at the surging life expectancy that's occurred in the United States, and most people are oblivious to this. They don't realize when this country was founded, average lifespan 35 years. We've doubled that, more than doubled that, and yet they pretend like, well, this is just, we can't live much beyond 100, and it's ridiculous. And I use these examples of what technology can do. Infant mortality, babies dying within the first year of their life, it's declined 90% in the last 82 years. Maternal mortality, the mothers dying during childbirth, 99% decline over an 80-year period. And I can tell you with more certainty than almost anything else that someday someone's going to sit here and they're going to show aging declining this way, deaths from degenerative aging declining 90%. Henry Flagler, I guess he was here at some point. He was an incredibly accomplished individual. But let me just ask a question to the group. I know a lot of you are very successful, but let's pretend you're not. Let's just pretend you're just a lower middle class person. How many of you would like to travel back in time to like 1890, 1880 even, and be Henry Flagler? Is there anyone in this room that would like to be Henry Flagler? Anyone here? Some people indicated they would be. Well, I'm going to give you a reason why you might not want to. Your housekeeper has so many advantages over Henry Flagler. And I know the weather's nice out there at the moment, but let's forget it. Let's think where we are. Florida. hot, humid, uncomfortable weather. If that was the only reason to be a lower middle income person today, yeah, I'd rather be that lower middle income person than live in a hot, humid mansion. But it's also everything else, especially medical care. If he suffered heartburn, Henry Flagler, well, he just had to live with it. He didn't have therapies like there are now to take away the pain. He didn't have therapies for virtually any problem. Coronary artery occlusion, malignancies, well, you just died. That's all. You look at all of what Henry Flagler didn't have that just middle-class people have access to today. It's huge. And this, I'm just trying to give people some incentives as to why, living longer gives you a lot of benefits. And the best benefit, by the way, and this is a projection that futurists like Ray Kurzweil are making, is that by year 2045, people are going to live a real long time, and their quality of life is going to be incredible. These predictions are likely to come true probably before 2045, but we need to make that 27 years. We need to live that 27 years, and we're not going to do that necessarily unless we reverse aging. We need to put aging in reverse. We need to accelerate the technology. And just to give you just one example of what's going on, 2015, FDA approves the first clinical trial on a drug called metformin. Metformin is an anti-diabetic drug. It happens to have properties that delay and may even reverse certain aging pathologies. So in 2015, the trial's announced, front page of the Wall Street Journal. About 6 months later, senior citizens scrambling to get into the metformin clinical trial. They were so impressed by the data supporting metformin's anti-aging benefits that there's like lines of people piling to get into this study. Well, that's 2016. 20 years before, Life Extension magazine advocated for metformin to be used as an anti-aging drug. And it's not like we invented metformin or even did our own clinical studies. We simply looked at the medical literature. Look at the study done in United Kingdom, 1995. Diabetics taking metformin, they lived longer. So we at Life Extension said, well, if the diabetics are living longer, let's start taking it if we're non-diabetic. So you look at this 1995 study, and then you go forward another 20 plus years, and again, metformin is improving people's lives. It's keeping pre-diabetics from converting into diabetics. And I hate to say it, most of us here, we don't control our sugar levels as well as we should, and metformin can help do that. So we continue to be passionate advocates of metformin. And if that's not enough, MD Anderson reported that diabetics prescribed metformin had a 62% reduction in risk of pancreatic cancer. Wow. I mean, anything that would reduce my risk of pancreatic cancer, I would be taking. But something that provides a 62% reduction, that's huge. And metformin does a lot more than just prevent cancer. And if you look again at how long it took for metformin to become available, approved in England, 1957, approved in the United States, 1994, and here we are 61 years later debating whether or not metformin should be taken by healthy older people. It's ridiculous, these delays that occur. The new paradigm, human age reversal, it represents a biomedical renaissance in medicine. And we at Life Extension and a new group that I formed called the Society for the Rescue of Our Elders are pushing every project forward. Now, if this chart looks like you lost a couple years, it reflects men. The previous chart was men and women combined. Women live longer than men. Men, unfortunately, die sooner. And I'm looking at my age 63 there. I've only got 19 years left. And if some people a little bit older than me, we have less time. We need to accelerate the research, which is why I started the Society for the Rescue of Our Elders, public benefit group. The mission is to accelerate wherever we can research that may give us clues as to what we can do to slow and reverse pathological aging processes. We do not accept donations, investments. We maintain an unbiased view on what can be done. There are 7 different age reversal interventions we're evaluating right now. Whatever ones work, we will report on those, and we'll report on those in an accurate way. How did we come up with that name? Well, 1767, a group of people, like the group of people in this room, in Amsterdam, they felt that there would be a way to revive drowned persons using cardiopulmonary resuscitation techniques, and they started going out after doctors were letting people just say, well, they're dead dead, they pulled them out of a canal, they're dead, they'd apply these techniques. In 4 years, they saved 150 people. And if I could only save 150 people in the next 4 years, I'd certainly be happy. But they set up this organization called the Society for the Rescue of Drowned Persons. And they essentially defied conventional wisdom by going out as volunteers and applying cardiopulmonary resuscitation techniques. And they redefined death. We plan to redefine aging. And that is why we started the Society for the Rescue of Our Elders. There's no membership fees. All you need to do is log on to a website. That website then can hopefully enable you to avoid getting into this kind of predicament. And this is reality. I hope it doesn't bother people, but if we don't recognize acute stroke symptoms and go to the right thrombectomy capable medical center, if we just let aging take its course, we're going to wind up in this predicament. It's a horrible situation. So, do you want to be part of the control or experimental group? You got two choices. If you do nothing, you will suffer these degenerative conditions. We all do. But our objective, we aim to circumvent every single degenerative condition associated with aging. That is our purpose for the Society for the Rescue of Our Elders. The website is here. All you need to do, register, and we will keep you informed on age reversal technologies, where you can go to get them, what they cost. And again, we don't sell them. We have no financial interest. We refuse to take any kind of financial interest because that creates bias. We don't want bias. We want truth because we're running out of time. Again, the biomedical renaissance, and you know, when the Renaissance started around 1350, 1400 AD, no one knew they were beginning a renaissance. They just didn't know. But we're in that position right now. And I'm proud that it's happening, and I'm proud that I had a little bit of a role in accelerating it. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you, Bill, for a very dramatic presentation. I think you'll agree that was off the charts, really good.